Chuck Magro is President and Chief Executive Officer of Nutrien. He was previously President and CEO of Agrium, which he joined in 2009 following a successful career with Nova Chemicals. Chuck holds a Bachelor of Applied Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Waterloo and a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Windsor. He serves on a number of boards, including the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. He's also Vice Chair of the International Fertilizer Association and past Chair and current board member of the Fertilizer Institute. He's also served as Chair of Canpotex Limited and was on the boards of International Plant Nutrition Institute and the Nutrients for Life Foundation. Chuck, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
Chuck, Nutrien by any standard is a giant in its sector, yet it's a name that many Canadians may be unaware of at this point. Perhaps we could start by you giving us a short sense of the country's history, of the company's history, and of the scale of its operations in Canada and abroad.
Yeah, sure. So it's a really good characterization. And the reason for that, of course, is Nutrien's this is our fourth year of operation as Nutrien. So we are the product of the merger between Potash Corp of Saskatchewan and Agrium. And so we have roots in Western Canada. We are the largest fertilizer producer on the planet. So we are the largest fertilizer producer with about 30 million tons of global capacity. But we're also the world's largest agricultural retailer. So the way we think about our business is, I like to say, we go from the ground to the grower. So we make products and services that farmers need to grow healthy, abundant, and today now more than ever, sustainable food. And we have the distinct privilege and honor to work with about 500,000 growers around the world every year. We're delighted that they respect us so much to honor us, to work with us. And we would be considered one of the largest, the area we call it is crop input. So we'd be considered one of the largest crop input companies in the world. And like I said, proudly centered here in Western Canada.
It's quite a remarkable success story for a Canadian company, both in Canada and abroad. Let's look at the sector for a minute, if we can. The Canadian Chamber has identified agriculture as a key sector to help Canada's recovery from the pandemic, and also as a globally competitive segment of our economy that holds enormous potential for Canada. Could you comment on your perspective on the sector itself? What role can that play in terms of driving Canada's economic growth?
Yeah, for sure. So you're right the way you characterize it. Agriculture has always been very important and a major contributor to the Canadian economy. So there's no surprise there. In fact, if you look at Canada, we're really one of a handful of countries globally that export food and fertilizer. So it's always been an important part of the economy, and it will always continue to be an important part of the economy. I think when you look at even the global pandemic, what you will find is that most major commodities, whether you look at oil or gas or iron ore or nickel, most of those commodities declined pretty rapidly last year, whereas agricultural commodities and fertilizer actually demand increased during the pandemic. And we expect the demand to continue to grow actually in 2021. So this is an important part of, I think, Canada's recovery will be what we do well, right? Is we produce high quality, safe food and fertilizer, and we move that around the world. But I think there's an even more interesting opportunity for Canada to really turbocharge its economy. And it has to do with agricultural technology. So Canada is a growing, what we call ag tech market, competing with many hubs around the world. And ag tech, there's tens of billions of dollars now being poured into new technology for agriculture. And I think Canada really needs to work on being a major ag tech hub. So it's not just the production of food or fertilizer, but it's how technology is being used to either drive productivity gains, so producing more food with less resources, and then of course the whole area of climate change and impacting positively how we call it sustainable agriculture. So how can we use new technology and innovation to really up our game as an industry in what we call sustainable agriculture. So producing more food with less water, less land, and most importantly now, I think, less carbon.
I want to come back to that issue of sustainable agriculture in a minute, but you just laid out a very ambitious vision in terms of the role that agriculture can play over the longer term in driving Canada's competitiveness and creating prosperity in Canada. What about in the short term, where people are so focused on recovery from COVID? Is there a role that you see for agriculture in helping to pull us back out of the recession and get us back on track in the short term?
Yes. Well, look, I think the future is here. So I think part of the recovery will be you were going to see a continued increase in demand for food and for fertilizer, and our existing production of both of those sets of commodities, I think, will naturally increase. And that will help drive and bring the Canadian economy out of where it's at today. But I want to be super clear, the technology that's being used in Canada, so Canadian farmers today, they're leaders in sustainable food production. And we've been using technology that we call precision agriculture technology or variable rate technology, where we test the soil. We only give the crops what it needs when it needs it. These are tools and techniques that have been used in Canada for some time. And there's still major pockets of the world that don't use the technology. So there is a market here and now for us to move that ag tech around the world and to help developing agricultural markets become more sustainable. So I see this as just a tremendous opportunity for our economy and for Canadian agriculture to be branded as, a global leader, because that's where it deserves its place. And it'll be a mix of products and services that we do a very good job with, but new technology should be a growing part of that story for Canadian agriculture.
It's also a critical contribution that Canada can make to the rest of the world in terms of fighting poverty and hunger around the world. Very much
that is so true. Yeah, look, if you think about what's happened, there's still the latest numbers that I've seen is there's still about 600 million people globally that are undernourished. So poverty is still real, and I know sitting here in Canada, it's sometimes difficult to accept and to see that. But as we travel around the world and what we know, we do need Canadian agriculture to continue to do what it does, because we need to lift hundreds of millions out of poverty and to nourish them. And I think Canadian agriculture plays a role in that and can play a bigger role in the future.
And what's interesting to me here is that you talked about the quality of the technology. If you look at brand Canada, one of the strengths that the Canadian brand has is that it's of high quality. Secondly, that in our international activities that we're ethical in terms of how we do business. But the third is also that we're green. And in late November, you announced an ambitious and comprehensive carbon program that's designed to help reduce the agricultural carbon footprint. You alluded that a little bit earlier, and you pointed out that this could benefit farmers at the same time. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Sure. So look, we're really excited about this new program we've just launched, and just to set the stage. So we've got a planet that has about 7.5 billion people on it today. And by 2050, there'll be close to 10 billion. So we have to find a way to feed 2 to 2.5 billion more people. And we know that the answer isn't just deforestation and kind of hurting our environment, whether it comes from water usage or land. So we do need to figure out a way that we continue to drive up our productivity and to feed the world. But at the same time, we do know that agriculture is a contributor to climate change. And it's one of the largest contributors, in fact. So the industry needs to think really carefully about how do we feed all these people and positively impact the environment from a climate action perspective. And we've studied this now for several years, and our view is quite clear. We need to use capitalism. We need to actually look at building a carbon framework where farmers will get paid. So carbon is not today in most jurisdictions, including Canada, carbon is a cost on their expense statements for farmers. And now we want to move that and transition it from not only being a cost to being a revenue stream. And so we call it carbon farming. So think of a world where farmers are, of course, paid to grow crops. The crops are healthy, they're nutritious, and of course they're needed around the world, but they're also paid to sequester or abate carbon, because there's 3.5 billion acres of farmland around the world today. So farmland represents one of the biggest carbon sinks we have as a planet. And if we can change farming behavior through capitalism and through building a proper carbon marketplace, that could really change the very fabric of farming. And so we announced the program late last year. We're very excited about it, where we now, over the last 6 or 7 years, we've built a set of tools that we believe are game-changing for farmers. So we have the capability to build a digital model of a farm where farmers can calculate and predict how much water they consume, how much carbon they emit, and how much carbon they sequester in the soil when they use sustainable farming practices. We also have built up smart climate products and services for them that they can use so that they're more successful in abating and sequestering carbon. So we think we have a technology solution. And what we're doing in 2021 is we're piloting the program on about 100,000 acres in Western Canada and in select states in the US. And then we'll fully roll out the program in 2022. And this is an open program. So this is a program where we're actually calling on the industry to join us. We want all the upstream and downstream players to be part of this, because we know that climate is such a big opportunity and challenge for the industry that we can't go it alone. And we would welcome partnerships from the entire value chain. So, we're really excited about the program. We think that this is going to be game changing. It's also needed. Now, what's missing is policy. We need a framework so that we can calculate the carbon credits. And then, of course, we need to build the economics around those credits.
Chuck, that's an incredibly ambitious vision that you've set out there, and one that's extremely exciting. It's fascinating to see a company the size of yours that really is a global leader committing itself to making such an incredible change on a global landscape. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing that vision.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.